As a military man, how do you digest this report?
Well, I digest it with a lot of emotion, but I digest it with confidence that the government has now in place a fair and just way of moving forward. The Chief of the Defence Force, and this is the issue that he must solve. He is moving forward. He's come out. You could see the emotion in him yesterday. Many of the people who are contacting me, I see this very, very emotionally, Laura, because it goes to the essence of what we are. And as someone who, for a long period of time, has been accused of war crimes by ignorant people, I understand the impact on our soldiers and on our soldiers who may be involved in these allegations, or the greater family, not just of the Special Forces, but of our military as a whole. The impact on them, we've got to look after them. We've got to look after their immediate family and the larger family. So no, I'm digesting it, as many people are, very emotionally.
And who is contacting you? Are they current serving soldiers? And are they seeing this as a slight against their name, or do they understand that, I think I can speak on behalf of most Australians, understanding there is nuance in this?
Over the last week, in the period between when the government came out and stated how this was to be handled and when the CDF came out yesterday, I had many contacts, and most of them were from older generation soldiers who just were not fully aware that this is not something which pertains to actions in the heat of battle. And that many of whom fought in Vietnam, they were strongly of the opinion that what occurs in the heat of battle is a different thing than what Justice Paul Brereton has looked at in these reports. And that's a critical issue. I think in the last 24 hours, throughout yesterday, I've got a few indications that idea that this is not something which has happened in the heat of battle. And even in the heat of battle, we as soldiers do not have the right to indiscriminately kill. But this is something different altogether. And I think that's dawning on people now. And particularly, we've got 600,000 people who are ex-military in this country at the moment, and DVA handles about 280,000 from memory. So there's a lot of veterans out there.
Yeah.
And Laura, we've never needed our military to have both the military capability and the moral authority as much since the end of the Second World War as we need them now.
The SAS were on heavy rotation in Afghanistan. It's the longest war that Australia has been involved in. As you read this report, did it occur to you that the length of deployment in some way contributed to a type of fatigue where, for some members of the SAS, it got to a point where they saw Afghan life as being worth less than their own, if you like?
Well, desensitising is something that every military commander must be deeply aware of. And the role of leadership is to ensure that soldiers who are showing signs of being desensitised, of approaching the margins, are managed in a way, are mentored and managed in a way that prevent them from doing what has now occurred. The CDF yesterday said nothing is off the table. And at the time, I left the military in 2008. And in the period after I'd left the military, as a commentator, I'm on the public record as saying we should put in a much more balanced force. Now, I didn't do that on the basis of the possibility of war crimes, because I couldn't tell the future, but I did it on the basis of good military soldiering. Now, we've seen comments this morning from in the Australian newspaper from Brendan Nicholson, from Greg Sheridan along these lines. On your station, Catherine McGregor was very good last night on this idea of what's caused it. And Joel Fitzgibbon, even this morning, as a minister during that period, identified this. Now, I have strong views on this, but I won't put them publicly, Laura, so please excuse me, I will put them privately within my own system here as a member of the government, but not publicly.
Okay, so let me ask you more generally then, because I know you do want to make those grievances, if I can put it that way, known privately. But we are, I guess, being asked in many ways this morning to believe that some of these soldiers acted with impunity. Do you think there needs to be some ramifications, if we're talking about culture here, up the chain of command?
No, I trust firstly the PM, who I think has handled this very, very well, and every one of our soldiers should understand that Prime Minister Morrison has an extraordinary empathy for the military, but that's not an empathy which blinds him to the fact to have process. But this is fundamentally the Chief of the Defence Force's problem. He will solve it. I thought he was fabulous yesterday. We are well led, and he has said nothing's off the table. Now I take that. I take that as the truth. But I like the way the government has established what they're calling an oversight panel of 3 distinguished Australians. One was the ex-Inspector General of Intelligence and Security, so these people have got the highest access to intelligence, to oversee what the CDF and his commanders now do to ensure that this culture changes. I think they're in place now, and I think after we've looked yesterday at the terribleness of this, now people, I think, are realising that in place we have a system, we have leaders who can lead, and now we're going to solve this problem and come out of it stronger.
How do we come out of it stronger, Jim Molan? What about the policy? You note Greg Sheridan writing this morning in the Australian newspaper saying the way in which we entered the Afghan war and the role that the SAS took is perhaps a contributing factor to what we've seen in this report.
Well, we come out of it stronger by everyone involved in this process continually studying how war should be waged. And the overall capability of governments to wage war is as important as our ability to do anything else in government. Now, we can move on from this. We can trust the system. I trust the Australian legal system to give these soldiers their rights, to make sure that they're treated fairly. I trust DVA and the access that they're providing through Open Arms to look after individuals and families. And I trust the Chief of the Defence Force as a good leader who will bring us out. But the greatest weakness we could ever have as a military, Laura, is to not sustain our position on the moral high ground. Yes, we can fight. We can fight fabulously. We're amongst the best fighters in the world. But there's no point fighting if you lose your moral authority, if you lose your moral high ground, if you lose your framework and your compass. These are just words, but as a soldier, I tell you, they are absolutely everything. And ethical leadership, which is a term that's been in the ADF now probably for 15 to 20 years, to my knowledge, ethical leadership, to do the right thing as leaders. To do that, you can still win wars, win battles, and still have the moral authority that we need to live.
Jim Molan, appreciate your time this morning.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you.
If you are a serving or former member of the Defence Force or a relative in need of support, you can call Open Arms on 1800 011 046, the Defence Family Helpline on 1800 624 608 or Lifeline on 13 11 14. You can also speak anonymously via the Defence All Hours Support Line on 1800 628 036.